Seven on Sundays podcast is intended for mature audiences. Episodes discuss sensitive and fraught topics that many teens and 20-somethings face, but may be triggering. The content may not be suitable for all audience members. Please take caution when listening.
So today we have Parker back with us. We're so excited to have you back, Parker. And what we talked about in a previous episode, whether our guests, our listeners have listened to that or not, I just want to quickly recap that what we talked about was that you kind of grew up on porn. That's what it dawned on us, that, you basically grew up at a very formative age, watching porn from 13 until now you're 29.
Yeah.
So those years of all that sexual development through puberty was seen through the lens of porn. And then prior to that, you grew up in a, seemingly more fundamentalist Christian home where you didn't have a lot of education, really no education about what sex was. So again, the porn became your sex ed teacher, basically. You were homeschooled and very sheltered, you said. So here we are continuing with your story. And what I really wanted to talk about was the following. I was so struck by, and I've been thinking of these for the whole week since we talked. You named like 5 or 6 things that porn told you. You used the words, porn told me this. And it was so eloquent and amazing. You're an amazing guest for us. But what you said was, porn told me that I didn't look like the people on screen, so I'm not worthy. It told me I was overweight. It told me I have to have sex in a certain way to be good at it, and I have to be good and I have to perform. And that you would kind of go into a panic mode if somebody you were dating was watching porn and you didn't look like that person. So for one continuation of that, I wanted to ask you, in terms of your mental health, because those are mental health issues for me. In terms of your mental health, how is your anxiety? How is your depression? How is your mood? We haven't talked about that. So I was curious about your mental health being someone that has watched porn from 13 to today.
I think that's a wonderful question. And I feel like right now at this point, my mental health is at the best that it has been. I've done a lot of work on myself, and that involved a lot of books that I read, that involved a lot of therapy, which was just so beneficial for me. In 2022, I basically did therapy for a year, and it was my first experience with therapy. And I found what I consider to be the perfect therapist for me. And she helped me so much through a lot of my self-esteem, through a lot of my self-worth, through a lot of, breaking down a lot of the lies that I believed about myself. And it's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of pursuing mental and physical wellness and doing whatever that looks like for me at the time. It took a lot of learning about my, everything from hormones to, my cycle and how that affects my daily life, and going into self-esteem and what I believe is true about myself. And it's funny, until I had talked with you both, I didn't really correlate the issues of self-esteem and self-worth to porn until I started really deeply thinking about it. And what you said was just so accurate, where during those formative years watching porn and learning, without realizing it, learning that, or believing these lies about myself because I was watching porn. It was a huge eye-opening experience talking with you both to realize that, this porn watching wasn't just, a phase. And it wasn't just something that I did. It's a lot bigger than I used to think that than it was. To answer your question, I personally feel like my mental health is very strong. Right now, I've definitely gone through bouts of depression. I've experienced a lot of anxiety, And I don't feel like I won't ever experience those things again by any means, but I feel like I've learned a lot of tools to help me through those feelings and through those thoughts. And it certainly helps to have a partner who is extremely reassuring and is able to help you walk this life or help me walk this life, together. And it's I feel like I'm in a really wonderful place, and I'm very grateful to myself and to my therapist and to the people that have been in my life to help me get to where I am.
Parker, if you are still using pornography, which you acknowledge that you are, and you struggle with those things, is it kind of like two steps forward and one step back? You
Um,
know what I mean?
yeah, no, I totally know what you mean, and that's a really good question. I feel like after learning a lot about how I function in my menstrual cycle, where, during I think it's the follicular phase and before ovulation phase, I couldn't give two craps about what anybody thinks of me. Even when I'm watching porn and I'm feeling like the hottest person ever. I have the best, self experiences, pleasure wise, and I can wear anything, I can do anything. I feel very powerful. And I've tracked that and I've learned that after ovulation and into that premenstrual phase, everything sort of dips. And I experience a lot of stronger self-worth issues, feeling ugly, feeling not worthy, feeling, fat, feeling unable to do basic things. And I've seen this pattern. And so because of that, I guess you could say that it is a two steps forward, one step back. But it's interesting because when I watch porn now, I don't feel those feelings as strong of comparing myself to how that person looks. It's, dare I say, almost making it object I don't wanna say objectifying it, but in a way, I think that is what's happening in my brain. I'm not sure. It's less of a in my mind compared to when I was younger, and it was so much about the fact that I didn't look that way. Now I'm almost accepting of the fact that that person looks that way. You know, I still will see someone in a porn and think, you know, I think in my brain, I still believe that that sometimes could be the physical beauty standard. And I do have those thoughts every once in a while of like, "Oh, I don't look like that." But it's less self dep I don't really know how to word that, and I apologize, but it's not as, critical on myself. It's more accepting of the fact that, you know, those are actors. This is a fantasy. This is not real. And, you know, what I am and my body and who I am is what is real. And the way that I look is what's real. I think that's also just happened because I've been able to grow in confidence in myself. It's weird, the word numb keeps coming back into my head of when I watch porn now, it's a way to help me achieve orgasm, and that's basically what I see it as, if that makes any sense at all. It's a very
No,
good
that
question.
makes perfect sense. I mean, so much sense. What I'm seeing and really when I think about you is you came from this culture of truly unaware, like you were completely unaware of anything in this realm, right?
Yeah,
From your upbringing. So there was that conditioning. Then the kind of deconditioning that happened through porn, and you came into this new awareness of, oh, this is this thing. And now you're kind of in this restructuring of the conditioning and deconditioning. And so truly, if there was like an awareness award, I'd give it to you, Parker. We'd give it to you. We'd create a nice awareness award because I feel like your awareness into you just explained all these physical things that I can't tell you how many women do not know about the follicle stage and what happens and how that works hormonally. So the fact that you at your age are already into an awareness of your body in that sense, awareness of your habits and what's happening, awareness of how it impacts you and your relationship, those are gold. Like, those are so good. And we're never where we want to be. We're always evolving and growing and changing. But I just want to recognize that in you, that your ability to be so self-aware is going to help you immensely, and we can all learn from that. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Good
Well, thank
therapist,
you.
by the way.
Thank you
I don't
for
know what kind of therapist she
that.
was or he was, but whoever it was, it sounds like you had a good person for sure.
Yeah, she was really wonderful and she helped, actually a lot of the cycle learning I did on my own. And once I figured that out, it was almost like I had unlocked this huge revelation and it felt so good to learn that about myself because it really impacts everything, how I am at work, how I am with my fitness, how I am with mental health. But I do have to give thanks to my therapist. She was really wonderful and helped me ask a lot of questions and work through a lot of things that I struggled with.
Parker, because our audience is largely young people, and I think that the biggest message from your story is the fact that you did grow up using pornography, that you were exposed to it. I think you sought it out yourself, but the fact that you had this sexual sort of, I want to call it like awakening, watching Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, and
Yes.
like this started your journey into exploring what is sexuality. Why do I have these different feelings in my body? What is this arousing in me, right? At 12
Yeah.
years old, as we said before. What I am curious about is your family dynamic. You talked a lot about how your family didn't allow anything in the home that was at all, sexual, that your dad, even when you were in the relationship at 22, wrote a letter to you saying you can't have sex with this person. And I think it's really important because there are a lot of parents out there who think that telling their kids they can't have sex, keeping them isolated from the world and some of the things. And I mean, I'm all for keeping your kids away from pornography because I think it's bad. But like, I just think that it's important for you to speak to how having parents who were so conservative didn't help you in, understanding yourself, and how, parents who are thinking that that's the answer. What do you think, I guess, is really important? What do you think would have helped you the most as this 12-year-old who has questions about what they're seeing on television and why do I feel this way? Like, what did you want or need from your parents?
Oh, that's a really wonderful question, and I'm I'm really glad that you asked that. I well, if there are, parents watching, I was raised Christian in a very strong Christian family, and I have very strong Christian parents. And with Christianity, I was raised on the belief that sex before marriage was wrong. And I think because of that, my parents hoped and didn't want me to have sex before marriage. And so because of that, they I think we're at a loss on how to as many parents are. I understand it's an incredibly awkward topic. I don't know how I would approach this if I had children about how to talk about your bodies and sex and what it looks like. And essentially how they went about it was, I found a book that my mom had purchased about, puberty, and it was basically a body guide to girls and what happens in your period and all of that. And once I found it and started reading it, she was kind of like, "Okay, you can just read that." And there was nothing about sex in that book. And I vaguely remember when my parents wanted to sit me down and talk about sex, we had a picture book. And I just remember seeing a photo of, or a drawing of a man and a woman laying in bed. And my parents kind of puttered around explaining how sex worked, and it was nothing graphic. It was very much, I remember just thinking, okay, so a man and a woman lay down in bed and do this forbidden act, and the woman becomes pregnant, but this all happens within marriage, and so in a way it was almost like I didn't think that that was possible to do outside of marriage, and if it was possible, only bad people did it. And what I wish I would have learned from my parents was a little bit more raw, a little bit more real about, hey, one, your feelings are completely normal. This is normal to feel this way. It's normal to see something on television and, get that fluttery feeling in your stomach. This is completely normal to have wild crushes on boys and not know why and want something physical all of a sudden and be so just hot and horny and that those are all real and normal feelings. I think number one, if I was reassured that that was okay, I would have been a lot better off, but I wasn't told that it was good or bad. It was just swept under the rug. And to piggyback on that, not only wishing I had the raw education of what physically happens during sex, but I would have loved to learn about protection and what protection looks like. I was never educated what a condom was. I was never educated about birth control. My parents personally believed that, taking the pill is a form of abortion and that that form of birth control was forbidden or not allowed. And I was not told that if I was going to have sex, this is how you protect and this is how you consent and this is you are allowed to say no. You are allowed, no is a sentence. And all of those things were never taught to me. And it didn't help that being homeschooled in our community, we everyone was learning that same topic. So everybody was under the impression that, if you had sex before marriage, you were bad. And all of these feelings were bad because nobody talked about them. And it didn't help that we would have homeschool dances and they were dress coded. So modesty was very important, but it was mainly dress coded for the women. Extremely so, we were not allowed to have skirts that went above our knee. If they saw that, maybe you were wearing a skirt that was above your knee, they'd make you kneel and measure the length of your skirt. Like, there were so many things that I can go into detail about that was taught also in the homeschool community that is extremely negative now thinking back on it. Just this shaming women for dressing a certain way.
I think what's important is that those things were happening for all of the people around you at the same time. And the acknowledgement that parents need to, understand that sexual development happens with or without them. So
Yes.
what it led to was, as Dr. Chez said, you going to porn and finding out about bodies and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious because a lot of what we talk about is how porn conditions you. You talked about how it conditioned you, what you thought about your body. What I would like to know is how did it condition the way you felt you were supposed to be with men or with women? And was part of that conditioning you acknowledged before that like lesbian porn was more something that you would watch? Did that make you feel, did that confuse you more? And clearly you had no one to talk to about this because it would have been your parents. So I'd love
Yeah.
to know how beyond what you felt about your physical body, what did it make you feel? How did it condition you in the realm of sex, your sexuality, all of that kind of stuff?
Well, because I didn't have my first sexual relationship until my 20s, all throughout junior high and high school, I, you know, I I just didn't go there. I mentioned in the last episode that that physical aspect of sex just kind of grossed me out. I wanted the intimate, I wanted the romantic, and it did confuse me to watch lesbian porn because that was another sin. Not only was I watching porn, but I was watching homosexual porn, which in the way I was raised, being gay is, and it's not, it's we were taught that it's not of the Lord and it's not it's a big sin. So when I did first start having sex, the I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. It was very scary, and I remember having no idea what to do. Even though I had watched so much porn, I felt completely, I had no idea how to pleasure someone, another man. I had no idea how to perform, and it was stressful. It was extremely anxiety driven, and I just I also remember, after having sex the first time and not orgasming, and seeing how an orgasm happened for a man. I just remember laying there and thinking, "That's it? That's what I've built up in my head over all these years of, like." I I remember thinking, "Wait, I feel like I should have gone to hell at that exact moment." Like, I just did the most unspeakably bad thing I was raised to not do. Why am I not feeling, shame or guilt? And it was so many different emotions of, like, what that it was so anticlimactic. I remember thinking, well, in porn, this is the most explosive, happy, feeling good moment. When I masturbate, this is the peak. This is, what you're striving towards is this orgasm. And I just remember laying there and thinking, well, great. It sounds like it was great for him. This kind of sucked. Like, this was, and I started believing that. And then I started the performance aspect as I started having sex with that partner was like, okay, I have to perform. I have to show him that I'm orgasming. I have to fake it. I have to, women actually don't really feel that good during sex. I started believing these things that, and it didn't help to be with someone who had no idea what they were doing sexually either, but they thought they did. And so I was being told that that's what happened, and then that was truth. And so it was so many different lies being fed to me that I believed because my only experience was porn. I definitely, for a long time, did believe that I was bisexual because I watched lesbian porn. As I grew older, I started thinking more logically about it, that I didn't really have any interest in dating a woman. I didn't have any interest in marrying a woman, but I would still be interested in maybe having a sexual experience with a woman. And I didn't really know if that classified me as bisexual or not because I didn't know. So it's really interesting how it started, you know, physically impacting the way I had sex, and just falling down this deep hole of treating sex equals worth. And if I have sex with this man, he's going to value me and worth and call me worthy and want to pursue a relationship with me. And after I broke up with the first person I had sex with, I had my first one night stand. And I remember that being just the biggest slap in the face because I had sex with a coworker, and after I immediately messaged him and was like, "That was so awesome." It wasn't. "That was so great, let's do this again, let's hang," and he immediately blocked me and messaged me and said, "I want nothing to do with you anymore. That was a mistake. I'm not that type of guy." And I just remember feeling so betrayed and so just like, "Well, you failed. You didn't do your sexual duty. Time to try again. Time to watch more porn. Let's get completely educated again." And it's so trippy to me thinking about that now and seeing the full impact that porn really had on me.
I have a question that you can I think I know the answer, Parker, but did you have anyone in your life that you could talk to about these things, or were you completely alone in
I
processing
did.
all of this?
I had a best friend. We're unfortunately not close anymore, but I had a best friend for about 15 years of adolescence and college. And I talked to her a lot about my experiences, and she, at that point in our life, had still valued sex before marriage. She waited until marriage to have sex, and there were certain, she was always just quiet about me experimenting sexually with different men because she would see me fall for them and fall in love with them and see them treat me, like a third party, like I didn't even matter. And so I would be open to her about certain guys, and we'd end up getting in fights because of she was angry that the way she saw from a third lens how I was being treated and didn't want people to treat me that way. And I was like, no, but he's great. He's really great, in this aspect of things. And so I did overshare a lot with her, and I think I over abused that relationship because she was the only person I could turn to about things. So she found out everything whether she wanted to or not, and we didn't ever set boundaries as friends. We just talked about everything. But she definitely watched me kind of go off the deep end sexually. So that was my one confidant, my one person I could talk to about.
Did she also watch porn?
So that's actually kind of an interesting question because I told her that I was watching porn one night when we were very young during a sleepover, and her mom had overheard me explaining sex and porn and what I was watching. She had overheard us in the room, and because her mother overheard, her mother then forbade me to be friends with her. And that was really hard because I had just been extremely vulnerable about my pornography watching to a friend, and to be immediately called out and shamed for it was really hard. But I don't believe she ever went down the porn path. We never really talked a lot about it. That wasn't something that was a part of our friendship after that conversation. She knew that I struggled with it, and that was something that I think she kind of just let me deal with, but I don't believe she ever went down that road.
The reason I ask is because she did wait until marriage, and I
Mhm.
think if there's something that correlates to studies, it does show that even though you didn't have an early sexual debut, you had a lot of ideas in your head about sex for a long time. And I'm not suggesting that doesn't happen naturally or biologically, but it definitely does make abstaining from sex very challenging. If
Yes.
you
Yes.
are getting yourself sexually aroused and then trying to like tamp down a physical interaction with another person, that does make it more challenging. And that's why I was just curious if she also was someone who watched porn. I want to just quickly go back to something you said, that you had this feeling like, oh, that's it. I have talked to young men and I have talked to young women, lots of them, who have the exact same experience of sex, the initial first experience of sex, especially when they have a pretty heavy porn use, because it's a letdown from that experience of like the high dopamine. For anybody who's struggling, I think it is important to acknowledge that that dopamine that you're getting is hard to replicate in real life with one person. And I don't know if it's your experience, but a lot of people who use porn will have several screens opened at the same time. They
Mm.
will be watching extreme things that you may not be able to replicate in real life with a real partner. Or if you do, it's hurting your partner. For porn users, there's a lot of dissatisfaction, not even just with the initial sexual experience, but with many sexual experiences. That's your past, but I'm wondering if you had that same feeling, in these things. Did you feel like if you could just do this extreme behavior, the sex would be better? Or if your partner wanted you to do something, okay, maybe that's going to make it better. Did you have that idea that like we're not doing exactly what they're doing in porn, and if we were, that could make the experience more arousing, orgasmic, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, a lot of the partners that I had, I watched them, and during sex, it always felt like they were acting like the porn stars they had seen. And because of that, I would have to perform like porn stars they may have seen. And I could see that they had watched porn a lot before because that was it, the way they were acting was just like how I had seen it in porn. They would want to try these, freaky positions or different things that being a plus size bigger woman did not work with me physically. But at the same time, I'm feeling okay, but I have to be smaller. I have to fit into this box that they see in porn. And so the constant feeling of having to, if I did what a porn star might do, it might feel better. And it's funny because when you do exactly what porn does, often, at least in my experience, it never felt good. It felt like a performance. It's not the hot and heavy romantic good feelings that I've experienced with my partner now. It was more raw and so performative.
What I think's happening in this, generation and culture now is that relationships and sex have become acts, and social media kind of brings that on too because we're doing a lot of acting there.
Mhm.
But we've become as inauthentic and as kind of almost untrustworthy and
Yeah,
not intimate in the correct ways anymore. And so these acts are we're trying to fulfill a void. And I'm saying
yeah.
we, but I'm married, whatever. But I'm
But you see
seeing that
it,
this
yeah.
culture of kids that I work with and that Stephanie works with, that they are so needy and so unfulfilled because their relationships in general are an act. And
Yeah,
especially if they're following and watching porn, then the sex that they eventually may get to is also as unfulfilling as ever because it's just this mistrusted, inauthentic, unintimate, unloving, pretty much
yeah,
unloving. So
yeah.
when you pull all those ingredients out of what intimacy is actually, then you're left with that feeling, like you said, like, that's it, you know?
It's the same thing in drug addiction and things like that. You're chasing an elusive high. Like you
Yeah,
can't ever get to that place. Going back to what Dr. Shez just said, you can't get to that place because you are not embodied in those experiences, right? Like
right.
it's an escalation, it's like a chasing of something
Yeah,
instead of just being present in it, and it's almost like alcoholics who are like, "Oh, if I drink more, it'll feel better," but it really
yes,
doesn't. Like it's
yeah,
not really it doesn't really work that way, and it kind of I think works the same way with pornography and how that correlates to a relationship that you're in or a sexual experience that you're having.
yeah,
The telltale sign is how you feel the morning after with any of those things. The telltale sign for, addiction, trauma, all those things is when you're in a different mindset, when you are clear-headed, how do you feel?
yeah.
And if you're in a loving relationship and you have sex with someone, the next day you don't feel like a piece of shit. The next day
So
you feel
true.
like, okay, that was nice, or no, we could do better. Maybe we'll change this or whatever. But that's part of it too. And what Stephanie's getting to about the dopamine, I'd love to know your thoughts on, we talked last time and you agreed that porn is an addiction. What are your thoughts on stopping this? And do you have any resources available to you for if it brings all these negative things in your life and you're correlating that now? Are you interested and able and willing to kind of move down a different path where you might not need that anymore? Or you choose, let's say it that way, you choose to not partake anymore.
I am absolutely open to going down that path, and I think it would involve a lot more than just abstaining from porn because I feel like there is a lot of it goes, self-esteem issues that I can see creep up, at least with myself. It's not just porn that have an effect on it. I mean, porn is the main thing, but media, social media, everything now is just everyone is showcasing every bit of themselves and there's so much content and you look left and right and you're looking at someone's OnlyFans and you're looking at someone's, Instagram and there's this constant battle of like, yeah, self-love, body positive, post whatever you want, but at the same time there are people like myself who see those images or these celebrities or, there's just so much content that I feel like I could definitely work on abstaining from porn. I mean this and I know this sounds in a weird way because growing up I did consider myself addicted to porn. I don't I don't consider myself addicted to it as much now. Like I've said in the past, the feeling of being numb, where it's almost like I'm bored and want to masturbate and will watch it. I could see myself, you know, I don't my urges and my sexual needs are a lot different than, say, my partner's. And for a while, I was getting into a rut of like, what else is there to do? I'm just going to masturbate and I'll watch porn. And I think that, abstaining from porn watch could be something that I could see myself doing. I think I've gotten into a rut of it's just easier to watch porn and to masturbate, but I would be curious what it would look like for me to, delete those favorite videos or remove those saved images that get me, going, and just to see what that's like and how things grow or improve or change, but I would have to also every social media network now is just completely filled with images of everyone showcasing everything. And it's so hard to get away from in today's society when everybody is glued to their phone. And I loved what you said about, relationships just feeling so transactional almost now, and I observe it in a lot of people, and it makes me thankful every day for my partner who has constantly said, we could not have sex forever and I would still want to be with you because you're my soulmate. And just having someone say that versus, the people I've been with who have wanted just to have sex, just to have sex. It's a different dynamic. But going back to answering your question, that would definitely be something I'd be interested in. I know I've tried in the past to not, and I've gone months and months without it, and then have always seemed to revert back to, why not, and so it would definitely be something I would consider.
Just a couple things that I have learned. So if you want to listen to a podcast that we did with Harrison Haynes, he talks about digital intentionalism. And I think that you are not going to get past the desire for pornography unless you consider maybe doing a detox from all social media. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own insight as to what I think. I'm not your psychologist or anything like that. But I think that even though you said you don't have an addiction to porn, my concern is the fact that it's like, oh, I'm bored.
Yeah,
Oh, whatever. Like there is, even if you said that there was a numbing that happened before, I really don't know that you cannot be numb
yeah,
looking at porn in this day and age. I don't want to say you're lying to me. I just think maybe you're not conscious of the fact that it has a numbing effect.
yeah,
And I just think, and Dr. Chez may disagree entirely, but I just think that if you're being numbed at all, and there has to be some level of numbing, that, it has the characteristics of what addiction does to people. And, like you said, that you're more secure in yourself now, and that it doesn't bother you as much, but you're a young woman. And as you go through life, there are going to be hills and valleys in your self confidence. That's just
yeah.
life. You're going to have a baby
Yeah,
maybe one day. You're going to get married. You might put on weight. You might get older. Your skin's going to sag. Your vagina, your vulva is going to change. Your boobs are going to sag. There's a million ways that your body changes. And right now you are at the apex of
yeah,
your body, of your physicality, right? So when you start to head down the hill, you have to have a very strong constitution of who you are. And I feel like looking at social media, which is why I'm suggesting a detox, looking at social media and spending your time doing that rather than building who Parker is
yeah,
only going to lead you to a self-fulfilling, I'm not good enough kind of a place. Because
yeah,
the answer and the fulfillment is not out there at all of the people out there comparing your body to other people. It's not in spending your downtime masturbating to porn because you have nothing else to do. And I hope this doesn't come across as a criticism. I just want to see the most powerful Parker possible. And
yeah,
I would like, just hearing the whole thing, I go, yeah, these things are all good, but it's like a band-aid on a boat that has like a hole in it, right? Like
yeah,
you need to literally make the ship seaworthy before you can just allow things that were numbing to your brain back into the ship. Like I just don't think it's possible to put the thing that created a hole in the ship and think that it's going to be okay.
That's just
Yeah.
my 2 cents, and I just
It's
feel like
not,
I
yeah.
want you to be strong and know that your body will change. You're not always gonna feel strong about it. That's life. How do I make me strong inside for who I am and all that I bring to the world and to the universe and to other people and to relationships? And that is so much more than pornography, your body, how sexual you are, how beautiful, how hot you are, how good you are in bed, all of that. So
Yeah,
that's just
that
my
was
2 cents because I
amazing.
think you, Parker, are an amazing human being.
Yeah.
And I hope all that made sense. I'm just trying to
I
No,
put
think
these
that
steps
was the
time.
gold. That was like perfect, like mic drop moment right there.
I think that's spot on. And I think that remembering that going forward, Parker, that it may take a concentrated effort that's bigger than just porn, that it is this digital thing. And listening to Harrison Haynes's interview might help with that. And look, we're all addicted to our phones. We're all addicted to social media. I haven't met people that aren't really too many people, and it takes a concentrated effort. What I would love to see is what we talked about a little bit individually is let's start having relationship groups. Like, let's get together with kids, and you don't have to be with your partner, but let's start talking about how do you have healthy relationships? How do you stop social media from influencing your self-esteem and your relationship? Stop porn from influencing, stop all these other outside things. That's what Stephanie's talking about. Like, let's work on the ship and work on that together openly. I think that there are groups out there for specific, diseases or mental health issues or whatever, but not in terms of how do we have healthy relationships. And that's something I think Stephanie and I can do. I think Parker, with your awareness award, really like you would be really helpful for this because your voice in the way that you're open and honest would immediately put people at ease to say, oh my gosh, me too. And, I didn't know there were, like you said, I didn't know there was somebody. I do want to ask you in the minute or two that we have remaining, how has all of this, and that's why I'm getting to this group kind of recommendation, have these past 2 podcast episodes felt for you, given the fact that you said you haven't shared these things for the most part with anyone? But how did you feel after the last time? And how are you feeling today, given what Stephanie just kind of like alerted you to?
Yes, well, after the last time, it felt like I had released a heavy burden, like without even realizing that I had a burden. But I felt lighter and I felt like I was able to just speak up for myself and what I experienced without feeling judged, without feeling, criticized. And it felt so good to be able to do that. And to know that, as you say, there are people who feel the same way. And to know that I'm not alone is the biggest comfort. And I think today I'm feeling more challenged at taking a inward look and a look at myself more deeper because I have and you're right. I have put the band-aid on the bullet hole to phrase that, and it's something that I don't like to acknowledge with myself until it takes hearing that from a third party who's able to look at me from a different perspective. But it's a I feel it in a way as a challenge, as a, something that's so healthy to say, okay, well, we need to look at this and this takes work. And it's not just as simple as, being a like I just love the boat analogy. What you said was just so spot on. And so I'm feeling very hopeful and very inspired for myself. And it, like you said, putting that perspective of we all age, everything changes. I'm at my peak now, but that doesn't last forever. And that's human nature. And it's so comforting to put that into perspective. And I loved how you said, and it inspires me to work on who Parker is and who I am and what I bring to the table with sexuality and body image and how I look and the physical aspects put aside. And so I just thank you for being so encouraging and almost hitting me with that hard hard truth and advice of, because it's inspiring and it's definitely encouraging to hear from your side. So I thank you for that, and for making me feel inspired and ready to, hit the next step.
Well, I just want to say I would not be genuine or authentic if I sat here and I acted like I don't have a problem with the fact that you think that that is a good thing for your life. I don't see it as a positive ad at all, considering all that
Yeah.
we've talked about and considering all that I know, but I do want to say this. There is no one else on the planet ever before, ever since, that will come after you that has exactly what you bring to the table. You have value because of who you are, because of, I mean, I hate to say this, for me, it's a God thing, but it could be the universe. All that you have been endowed with is unique and amazing. It may not be that you're supposed to be on Broadway. It may not be that you're supposed to star in a movie. It may not be that you are going to, like, send a rocket into space, but what you bring to the table is absolutely important, it's worthy, and it's amazing. And your job is to discover what that is. And when you discover that, you will love yourself more. You will be impenetrable. Your boat will be sealed on all ends. And that requires you just knowing that you have all that purpose, that you have all of that importance to the world, to whoever it is. It may be small little things that you do every day that brings value and purpose to your life. It could be a hospice nurse. I don't know what it is. But I
Yeah.
promise you, if you stop looking outside at social media and you start listening to a still small voice in your head that directs you toward the things that give you passion and happiness, and you're not going to hear that quieting the noise by watching porn or by listening to the radio or by watching television. There's a still small voice that you need to give silence to hear it, and it's going to direct you to something that is going to make you impenetrable and let you see the value that you hold. That's the last thing I want to say, because I want the best for you, and I hope that once you start listening to that still small voice, you circle back to us and you tell us where you are, because I bet you will have no desire to look at porn, you will have no desire to look at the internet or ever compare yourself to anyone, because there is no one like you. End of story.
Totally. I
Hey,
want
girl,
to
got me
say,
crying over here.
oh, I want to say ditto to all that. And then I do want to myth bust one last thing, and then we will sign off. But I do want to myth bust that there's a peak. There's not a peak. We are every day. I feel pretty hot and sexy for my age, actually. I feel like I am in better of my peak than I
Yes.
was at 13, 14, 15, maybe even 29. I was a little mousy and I don't know, whatever, but no regrets. But I'm just saying, I feel like that it's all an attitude shift of where the peak is, and make today the peak, make tomorrow the peak, make the next day the peak.
Yeah.
That's the important thing. It's a mindset of, no, darn it, I didn't lose it because I'm 35 and not 22. I can still be that. It's just different. It may look different, but it's a mindset. I really want to say that to girls, because I think we get in that thing of, oh no, this is my best. And I totally disagree with that part. I
Yeah.
know that Stephanie does too. I know she would agree. But I think we have to stop that of putting that there's this age barometer to something. I feel pretty good I feel great where I am right now. So I want
That's
you to too,
inspiring.
Parker. You're an
Yeah.
amazing guest. We are so grateful that you were able to come back again, and let's do this again. I know you have more and more and more that you can share. Thank you so much.
No,
Thank
thank
you,
you both
Parker.
again. Seriously,
And
thank
for the record, the peak is the peak created by society, not the peak created by internally. That's what
Yes.
I meant if I wasn't clear.
Yeah.
So take care and thank you so much. And please circle back to us. I'm excited to
Okay.
hear more from you.
You bet I will. Thank you again both so much.
Welcome to the wrap up for part 2 of our interview with Parker. And Dr. Chez and I gave listeners a whole lot to think about in our last wrap up. But what I wanted to say about this episode is what I hear when people are very addicted to or normalize pornography, especially in this day and age. And I'm just going to say it briefly, is that It is the easy way to orgasm. It is the easy way to sexual satisfaction, which sounds really great in the short run, but in the long run, it keeps partners from having embodied sexual experiences. The fact that Parker finds it easier to have sex, to masturbate to sex. She doesn't have to think about her body and what it's doing and all that kind of stuff. And I just want young people to think about that, to think about why they are having the most intimate experiences with an individual, yet they don't feel comfortable enough to whatever happens, queefing, farting, bodies, flabby. All of these things are a natural part of life. We are not bots in porn. We are not these perfect people that can have edited out the queefs and the fat parts and the labiaplasty. We are real human beings. And we have to get back to a place where we are real human beings having an experience that is mutually pleasurable, mutually decided, mutually desired with another human being. It's an energetic exchange. And that energy is what you want to take in from another person. You care about them so much, you want to take in their energy. And let me just tell you something. If the person is a shit, you don't want that energy anywhere near you. So I'm hoping that these experiences are between two people that have the best intentions for each other. That said, bring your whole self, bring your real self. Don't be afraid of your real self. Porn is teaching you that your real self isn't good enough, and your real self is, with the right partner, more than enough.
Absolutely. I think you bring up great points, Steph. And this was such a good second interview because it illuminated even more about this tough topic. I want to say that I was really grateful that you pointed out and pushed and brought up the analogy of the Band-Aid on the bullet hole, because that is, I think, a point in society that we're missing the boat, literally, to continue your analogy. We're missing the boat with helping young people today and older, helping them recognize the fact that this is an addiction, what to do about it, where to go for help. If you have an alcohol or drug addiction, there is an alcohol or drug treatment center on every corner, pretty much. Not exactly, but you know what I mean. We know where to get help. We know what to do. If you question for yourself, if you have an addiction, you do. You probably do. So I think that this is a relatively new area in that term, that it's not recognized as a stated addiction or compulsion or habituation or anything else. And so the standard treatment protocols are not in place. We don't really have a formalized treatment protocol. And so that's tough. So we want to be able to help people with this, and just like gambling and other things, be able to really help people. But it first takes recognizing it. So I think that's what you really pointed out was, if this is still impacting your life in negative ways, why are you still going to it? And it was kind of I don't know if I'm bored or, whatever, but it's not a big deal. But it kind of is in when you zoom out. And so I think Parker got there, and I think we should follow up with this and kind of see. But my hope is that what I'd love to see down the road is, yes, more and more and more help with how do we break free from these kind of things? How do young people break free from these things? And how do couples work together to have fulfilling, loving, sexy, alive, like vibrant, healthy sex lives without needing to follow unhealthy scripts that just keep getting escalated and dangerous in porn? So that's the exciting part, is maybe we're going to be the pioneers on that path, Stephanie, to let's help couples with this. Let's help young couples find ways to be super embodied, to be really vibrant, consenting, and see talk as sexy, and see the co-creation as sexy, versus I'm just going to assume that you'll play along with this role. So anyway, it's good food for thought, for all of this, food for thought for what the future can be. And I'm always hopeful. and grateful for Parker for kind of helping us to pave that path.
Great insight, great insight. And, I think this is what you were saying too, is that just as a final thought, is Parker is in therapy. The fact that I said that to her and her therapist didn't, and I'm not knocking her therapist, but I think it's really important to tell people there are two schools of thought on pornography. And one is really based in the fact of like the Kinsey Institute. Pornography is healthy. It's part of a normal, healthy life. I can say after a dozen years of research, I do not find any aspects of it healthy. I find that it is removing us from, you know, those embodied experiences. And even for even for Parker, like thinking about like how it made her feel so bad about herself for so many years, and the fact that she's like accepted that she doesn't or is never going to look like these girls, but she continues to look at girls that are held up by pornography as the type of body that is worthy of sex. So there's two things. She's continuing to get these messages and she's just like numbed out the part of her brain that says, I'm not worthy because of that. And that the therapist isn't saying, maybe porn isn't healthy for you. And that again speaks to the two different schools of thought. Is porn healthy? Is it not? Again, I'm a person who says it's not, but there are a lot of therapists out there that say that it is. And I would say if you can still see the negative impacts in your life and your therapist isn't pointing it out, maybe you have a therapist that's of the wrong school of thought. And I'm not knocking them down. I'm just saying, personally, my personal experience, anecdotally, what I've seen across thousands of students, I would say it's not healthy. And the funny thing is most students, when you say that, they want to hear what you have to say because internally they know it's not serving their higher good. I can tell you that. Anyway, so just some things to think about. Next week, we will be back with another incredible interview at Sunday at 7 a.m. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of 7 on Sundays.
The 7 on Sundays podcast represents the opinions of Dr. Chez Leeby and Stephanie Boye based on our experience. It also shares the stories, behaviors, and opinions of our guests that we do not necessarily condone or view as healthy. 7 on Sundays is an open forum to discuss what is happening with our listening audience. Some names and details of our guest stories have been changed to protect their anonymity. This podcast is not a substitute for mental health treatment. If you are in crisis and in need of mental health support, please call 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It is free and confidential.
Join the conversation and connect with us through our website, 7onsundays.com. That's the number 7onsundays.com. We encourage everyone to do their own research. Thank you and be well.